Welcome to this explainer. Let's get right into it. For nearly a century now, Australia has essentially stood on its vast, rugged coastlines, looking out across the Pacific Ocean toward a great protector. It's an alliance and a geopolitical posture that has quite literally defined generations. But we have to stop and consider what happens when the sun finally sets on those old certainties. We're looking at a nation trying to navigate a world that frankly just no longer follows the rules it once knew.
So, does distance bring safety or a gathering storm? As the source points out, our current geopolitical reality has hit a profound crossroads. The vast oceans that once promised this cozy isolation and security, well, they might now be concealing some unprecedented challenges. It's a massive challenge to the way national security has traditionally been viewed. It really asks us to reevaluate whether geographical isolation is actually a shield or if it's just a blindfold to the gathering clouds of a totally new global era.
Right, so to understand this crossroads, we really have to look at the mechanics of the AUKUS Pact. That's the trilateral security partnership between Australia, the UK, and the US. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese characterizes this agreement as the single biggest leap in the nation's defense history. We hear about this pact a lot in terms of, cold steel, complex treaties, and billions upon billions of dollars. But it is absolutely essential to acknowledge the sheer mechanical majesty and the monumental scale of the new hardware being brought into play here. It's undeniably a massive pivot in strategic capability.
Now, what's really fascinating is the technology at the heart of this leap. It's staggering. We are talking about Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarines. These are vessels with quote-unquote infinite range and endurance. They're designed to just glide silently through the deep ocean for months at a time. The strategic goal here is the ability to hold adversaries at risk from a great distance. It's a profound technological upgrade that fundamentally alters the reach and the power projection of the nation's naval forces. But, and here's where the critique comes in, these machines come with a heavy, invisible price. Defense experts like James Curran actually warn that this arrangement could be seen as a continental gift to a foreign power's strategy. And that raises a very direct, tough question. In the pursuit of all this advanced military hardware, what is actually being traded away? Are the strategic benefits really worth the potential compromises to national autonomy?
And this abstract loss of sovereignty? It translates into highly physical realities. The source points out specific Australian military bases, namely RAF Tyndall and HMS Sterling, that are being directly integrated into America's broader war planning. By intertwining domestic infrastructure so deeply with an ally's global strategy, the concern is that a nation risks becoming basically merely a guest in its own home.
This creates a brilliant geographical paradox. On one side, we have the giant moat. That's the historical blessing of the vast waters to the north that have kept the continent safe for generations. But on the other side, by integrating so deeply with a foreign power strategic posture, the argument is that we are essentially building a bridge straight across that protective moat. It potentially makes domestic soil a far bigger target than it ever would have been otherwise.
Okay, let's slow down for a second. To truly understand the stakes here, this source presents a really sobering hypothetical scenario set in the year 2026, centering on a tragic conflict in Iran. Imagine the sky over Tehran literally filled with the fire of 200 aircraft. It's a heavy thought exercise, but it's designed to move us past the clinical bravado of war rooms and tactical maps and directly into the grim reality of modern conflict.
175. In this 2026 scenario, this is the number of children, mostly girls, lost at a school near an IRGC naval compound due to a targeting error. We really need to pause and absorb that heavy human cost. When leaders speak of credibility and resolve on the global stage, we have to remember the faces of those who ultimately pay the price when the theoretical rules of war become a catastrophic, real-world reality.
There's a sharp disconnect in how this reality is processed, too. In the corridors of power, a devastating event like that might be clinically labeled a short-term excursion. But for the families left in the rubble, it is not an excursion. It is the end of their entire world. The source highlights this to reveal the massive, gaping void between high-level geopolitical strategy and ground-level human suffering. And unpredictability completely defines our modern era. The text notes that when Donald Trump warned of an apocalyptic end to civilization during a past crisis, it was a huge signal.
We are entering an era where long-standing alliances can literally no longer be taken for granted. Instead, international relationships are increasingly treated like transactional insurance policies. They're totally subject to the whims and the volatile rhetoric of individual leaders.
So the crucial point here, and former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull really zeroes in on this, is the highly conditional nature of this deal. While billions have been committed to support foreign shipyards, U.S. legislation contains a massive caveat. It specifically states those submarines can be withheld if Washington decides its own undersea capabilities must come first. The source uses this to question the wisdom of doing so-called dumb deals, suggesting that respect on the global stage is won by standing your ground, definitely not through unconditional reliance.
We are ultimately presented with a choice between two totally different futures. It's a stark contrast. Do you become the silent partner, constantly scrambling for favor and accepting conditional agreements, or do you choose to become self-reliant? It's a push for a future defined by unapologetic firmness. Rather than playing the role of a northern imposter begging for security, the text argues true strength comes from treating neighbors not as staging grounds for someone else's war, but as family.
And to prove this isn't just some wild theory, look at Mexico. President Claudia Sheinbaum offers an alternative model for handling immense geopolitical pressure. She responded to threats not by scrambling for favor, but with unapologetic firmness and a demand for mutual understanding. It's a great example showing that a middle power can indeed stand firm and demand respect, rather than simply capitulating to the demands of a larger protector.
Which brings us to a really deep existential question. Is our sovereignty truly secure if the key to our defense is held in a desk in Washington? We have to look beyond the impressive specs of those nuclear submarines and ask a much harder question about the true definition of national security. Think about it. If your ultimate defensive capability can literally be vetoed or withheld by another nation's domestic legislation, are you truly sovereign at all?
Ultimately, the argument is that genuine safety doesn't just come from acquiring the absolute best, most advanced kit. True security comes from the confidence to stand on our own 2 feet. It requires a fundamental shift in perspective. It means treating Pacific neighbors as an inextricably linked family rather than mere strategic staging grounds for a distant superpower. It's a powerful call for a deeply rooted regional self-reliance.
Well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground in this explainer today, looking at the massive technological promises, the severe geopolitical risks, and those really profound questions of autonomy. The horizon is undeniably shifting. And, the real question isn't just whether we can trust our allies in this new, unpredictable era. The ultimate question, which I will leave you to ponder as we wrap things up today, is this: do we have the courage to trust ourselves?